Yes, yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Fully, aka the Mayor Goes to Host with the Most from Irie 98's Top Men's Podcast. And I have an incredible special guest today. We've all heard of the local legend, Clyde Best, a Somerset man. He grew up and he transformed the beautiful game, one might say. Well, they're finally telling his story. And I have the man in studio who is behind the storytelling. He is Dan Egan from Massachusetts.
Originally.
How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great, Foley. Great to be here. I've known all about the podcast, so I'm honored to be with you, my man.
All right. I appreciate you stopping by, Dan. We're just going to get right into it. First of all, tell us a little about yourself. How did you become the man with the plan to tell Clyde Best story?
Well, I've always known of the Clyde Best Story since the 1980s. And of course, I watched Clyde play as a boy in the North American Soccer League when Tampa would come into town to play the Boston Minutemen or the Boston New England T-Men. My mom took me to all those games. And so in 1983, I got shipped off to a school in Maine to learn how to study. And my classmate and teammate was a kid from Bermuda, Jerry Best, Clyde Best's
nephew.
Yeah. And Jerry, true story, on the first day said, "Hey, Egan, you're a pretty good player, but your only job is to pass me the ball. My job is to score."
Pretty good. That is Bermudian confidence. That was your first Bermudian confidence check in life. How did it work out?
It worked out great.
There you go.
Jerry Best scored a lot of goals, and we won everything. Jerry's one of the best players I've played with over my careers, for sure. And we were, Maine state champions, and we beat college teams and everything else. So it was quite a year, a lot of fun. And I also did my first Cape Cod to Bermuda, Marion, Bermuda sailboat race.
Okay.
When I was 16. So I've sailed in and out of the island my whole life. And knowing the Best family, once I met Jerry, every time I was on island, I would go see Jerry. And we stayed in touch all these years. So it's been a journey. And then during the 2017 America's Cup, I ran the whole sponsorship for Sperry Shoes. And
that's SoftBank and Oracle?
SoftBank, Oracle, yeah. Okay. And we sponsored the cup. So I gave a lot of people wearing Sperry shoes on the island. And of course, so that was a lot of fun. And it was during that time that Jerry and I really started to hang out a lot more. I was here a lot. And Clyde would come down to the Pompano and we'd hang out on the veranda there at the Pompano and talk about football and soccer.
A lot of apple juice and water.
That's it, yeah. Pretty much, yeah. And chowder.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're practically Bermudian after all these years. So you was that your first introduction to actually meeting Clyde Best?
I had not met Clyde before. I knew of the story and knew of Clyde. And so I called my old soccer coach, my high school coach from Maine.
Right.
And that coach said I should call another alumnus on island. And so he gave me the phone number for this gentleman, Dennis. And I called Dennis, and it turned out to be Speaker Lister.
Yes, sir.
Dennis Lister went to the same school in 1976 that Jerry and I went to.
It's pretty amazing. Sorry to cut you off, then, but Bermudians are everywhere.
They're everywhere.
And the number of Bermudians in one place can shock you. So there's another one.
Right there. And, of course, Speaker Lister told me that Clyde Best was a childhood hero and neighbor.
Yep.
So we were on the phone and he said, well, stand by. I'm going to put the Minister of Sport on the call. So next thing I know, I'm talking to Dr. Ernest Peets, Minister Peets, and Dennis Lister starts telling Minister Peets about our connection through Bridgeton Academy.
Come to find out,
he starts laughing. He went to that school in 1988.
It's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
This biography, documentary, however you want to phrase it, this started 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Without even knowing it.
Without even knowing it. Through friendship.
Through friendship.
Which is the Bermudian way.
Absolutely. So you get to talking to Mr. Peets,
Yeah.
and
And so they liked the idea, and that a documentary got started. And, I've done a lot of filmmaking over my career, a lot of sports.
okay,
My background is skiing, and I made ski documentaries all over the world.
I read and I've heard that you're a bit of a not just a skier, extreme skiing. Going to the places where the helicopters drop you. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. I'm known for skiing the most remote regions of the world,
Wow,
and have been a skier. That's been my profession really since the 1980s.
cool. So you're into sports filmmaking. Any films that we may have seen that people would know about, or just want to tell us, what type of sports films you've made?
Yeah, well, my sports films are around sailing. Obviously, the
Okay.
America's Cup, all of the Rolex big events. I produced for Rolex for a number of years, and for my ski documentaries, I worked for a very famous filmmaker, Warren Miller
Ah,
Entertainment, and Warren Miller made ski movies all over the world. I produced for Warren. I skied for Warren. Um, and so, there's over 50 films there, and I star in over 20 of his movies.
okay, so you're a sports guy.
I'm a sports guy.
No, I have to ask because we're Bermudian. We obviously have different lingo
Yeah.
to you as an American. Had you done any football, as you would call it, soccer? Had you ventured into that as sports documentaries or was filmmaking?
Well, I coached at the university level, at the youth level as well. I ran my local club in New Hampshire for a long time,
Nice.
and I love soccer. I love football, and of course I played. So that's really what drove it. But this is by far, I would say, the biggest and the most impactful film I've ever tackled.
I like the word you use there, impactful, because I don't think, and maybe you can answer this as sort of a guest who's come into Bermuda. I don't think locals appreciate the impact and the change that Clyde Best made to the English football game. You see, growing up, John Barnes, Thierry Henry, Didier Drogba, these players, Andy Cole, Dwight York, that we all love and celebrate. And Clyde Best was the first person of color to play in the first division of English football. And you had to tell that story.
It was an amazing challenge, to be honest, to tell that story, because when you mention the name Clyde Best, it's a name around the world that people are familiar with, but they don't fully understand the story.
Facts.
And Clyde Best, as a 17-year-old boy,
Left Bermuda.
let that sit in,
17.
by himself on a one-way plane ticket
That I did not know.
to London, and nobody greets him from West Ham.
Wow.
He's alone in the wilderness. In the late 1960s, with social tensions the way they were around racism, a black boy standing alone. When he got off the train, he got off at the wrong tube stop.
Which can be very dangerous in London.
Absolutely. He didn't know he should get off at Upton Park. He got off at West Ham.
I've done that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fair.
And he stood there with his suitcase in the rain, walking around the station all day, wondering what to do.
I did not know that is how the journey began. And I always wondered, as just a football fan, when he left Bermuda as a 17, I knew he was 17. Did he know that he may have the possibility of being this pioneer, of breaking this, racial divide between there were no players of color in the first division. And I've always wanted to ask him that. Hopefully I'll get the chance one
Yeah.
day. But does this documentary tell all these stories and more?
Tells all these stories. I mean, Clyde will tell you he would have gone to Timbuktu to play.
Yeah.
So he wanted to play football. And this was his opportunity. West Ham knew he was coming. They just didn't know when he was coming. And he arrived on a Sunday and the club was closed. So there was nobody to greet him at the club. There was nobody waiting for him. I asked Nicky Wells this, how did he get to his first tryout and who picked him up at the airport? And he had a player liaison person from the club greet him and with a car and everything else. So it's a big difference, right?
Absolutely.
And if it wasn't for a stranger that day to take pity on him and said, excuse me, son, are you lost? And Clyde said, I'm here for my trial with West Ham. And the guy jokingly says, aren't we all, mate? You know? And he said, well, come with me. And he took him a quarter mile away to the only other black family in the neighborhood.
Wow.
And they unannounced knocked on the door. And that was the Charles family. And that was fate stepping in. John Charles was the first black captain of any international British team, and he played for the West Ham Academy. And at the time, his younger brother, Clive Charles, who was 14 years old when the 17-year-old Clyde Best showed up, went on to, of course, he's one of the most famous black coaches in America, Clive Charles. And those two shared a bedroom for 6 years in that house.
Wow. So that's the beginning of the story. That's we haven't even got, that's not even the icing on the cake. That's the decorations.
We haven't even kicked the ball.
Wow. So this story, I was asking you, do you, after being on Bermuda for some time now, I know you're back and forth, but you've spent quite a bit of time over the last 7 or 8 years here. And I'm sure talking, you said Nicky Wells and other football associated folk, do you feel like Clyde Best Story is known and understood on the island?
I think there's different versions of the Clyde Best Story.
I think that's a good way of putting it.
And I think there's a Bermudian version of the story. And I also think that version is divided racially. One, he's a Bermudian. On the other side, he was a black Bermudian. And that different matters. And when you think about what Clyde did and people's understanding of what he did, what I know for sure is Bermuda is proud of Clyde Best.
Oh, absolutely. I can just piggyback on that and say we're proud of anybody that makes it. But Mr. Best being one of the first, unfortunately, at a time when sports wasn't as televised and as supported as it is today, it's not as easy to see, or it wasn't as easy to see him on TV as it is to see in the Key Wells. But we do get behind ours. I don't know if you've noticed that. We pick our teams and we stand firm. A lot of West Ham fans on the island. Have you noticed that? Have you been in touch with any of them for the documentary or just for conversation?
All the above. The West Ham fans on the island have been outrageous and really stood up. That the thing with Clyde is we had to really discover exactly what Clyde did. And to put that in the context, he's the first black superstar of the modern TV era.
That's the one.
He became a household name. Then you have to ask yourself, how did Clyde Best become a household name? It's because of television. There were other players that had played before him. John Charles had played at the top division, but not consistently. But in 1968, Match of the Day goes color.
Right.
And the first match they broadcast is West Ham versus Liverpool. And there's a black 17-year-old Bermudian boy starting next to legend and loved hero Sir Jeff Hurst, who scored a hat trick in the 66 World Cup final. And that was beamed into every house in the UK. He's not only the only black person on the field, he's the only black person in the stadium. And not only that, there's not an actor, a newscaster, or any other black face on UK television. It was Clyde Best. And that's how he became so well known.
Absolutely. And that young 17-year-old black kid who was the only one on TV, in the stadium, on the field, went on to score 47 goals in 186 appearances for West Ham. So he didn't just make a mark. He left an imprint. He left a legacy. And like you said, he showed up and showed out. He made people realize that persons of color were not only equal, they were in some cases much better than their white counterparts on the field, and they deserved a shot. And he paved the way for the incredible players like I mentioned earlier who have come along after him. Um, so that's again, we're just getting into
Well,
it
let's
here.
put that into context, though. It took another black West Hammer. It took 50 years for another black footballer from West Ham to score that many goals.
Yeah.
50 years. The number of goals Clyde Best scored in his career lasted for 50 years.
Yeah, so it just goes to show you the talent level. But does the documentary get into, obviously he succeeded and we love that for him. That's why he became the trailblazer, the pioneer, and he broke down these walls that needed to be broken down. But does this documentary get into what was happening off the field? Tell me about that sort of stuff. The hate, I'm sure there was plenty of that. The threats, I've heard stories of those. Can you talk to me about that?
Absolutely. The film covers racial tensions here in Bermuda, America, and the UK during Clyde's time. It looks at the Bermuda Clyde grew up in and the Bermuda he left, and the England he went off to, leaving this beautiful place to a really, cloudy, rainy neighborhood with racial tensions. And really, when you look at the totality of what he did over the length of time he did it, it was the noble Bermudian character that allowed him to carry forward. Clyde will tell you, I did what my parents told me to do. Be nice to others. And that is so Bermudian in my mind.
Oh, absolutely. The golden rule is taught to all of us. Most of us follow it too, right? Right up until this day. You do unto others as you have them do unto you. You treat people with respect, and that's the Bermudian way. So I'm glad you've learned that. We appreciate you shouting that out. But documentaries, they don't always tell the true story. So the fact that you do get into the nitty gritty to the racism, not only in England, but you mentioned the United States, Bermuda, the racial tensions. So we dive right in, or we don't just scrape the top. We dive right in.
I don't think you'll find a sports doc that dives in as deep as we go,
Oh, I love
to be
that.
honest. And Clyde himself has not a bad word to say about anybody.
No, that's facts.
And that's fact. And so he carried his tension internally, which is also a trait of his generation and a trait of the time. And Clyde knew that the way to meet adversity was through excellence, score goals, quiet the crowd, even to the point where they threatened to throw acid on him.
That's the story. That right there is the story I've heard. So we get to hear all about that.
All about that. You hear all about that. And the monkey chants, when the archival footage captures the monkey chants, it's unbelievable. And we play a sample of that in the film.
Wow. So we're getting real live from his time on the field.
From his
footage.
time. And then you progress there to Bananas
Yeah.
and John Barnes. Bananas being thrown at John Barnes, and what John Barnes says about that, what Viv Anderson says about that, what Garth Cook says about that, Howard Gale, and all these famous players. They say the same thing in the beginning of the movie. I turned on TV, and there was a black man.
That's incredible. So we do have. I was going to ask if we have any guests, guest appearances. I guess you could say interviews or opinion pieces. So we do. You've mentioned John Barnes, and who else is involved?
We have Ian Wright. We've got Les Ferdinand, Paul Cannavale, Randy Horton, of course, and and other Bermudian players. And you really have the who's who of English players. We've interviewed the first black player at every club.
Wow.
At every club. And, not all of that makes the movie, but all of it shapes the story.
So as a filmmaker, had you ever done a film that crossed the racial lines so intensely and told the story that was basically racism being broken down by one player from a tiny island from Bermuda. But had you ever made a movie that embedded itself with racism so much? And how did that affect you?
Yeah, I thank you for the question. It really affected me. It was a very challenging project. I'm a kid from Boston, from the city, and racial tensions are all throughout the city of Boston. And I had to come to everything I understood about racism was wrong, and get to the point where I know nothing, and bring that to the table. So now it doesn't really matter what my experiences were or what I think about it. I let the people in front of my camera tell me their experience, and that's what I believe. I believe the lived experience, and that lived experience is what we put in the movie.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As someone that's grown up on this island, it's very easy for us as white people to not recognize our privilege and, like you said, listen to what we're told. But when you listen to the stories and embed yourself in the lives, multicultural, go and live outside of your own race. We're all one people, and some people do go through some horrible things. Obviously, history tells us, but to hear it, you have to listen to it. Don't just hear it, listen to it, take it in. And like you said, everything gets stripped down and you learn. And I think that's the way that most of us become better people or as white people. So this documentary, sports and racism being broken down, I mean, that's incredible, Dan.
Yeah, thank you. It's the movie tells the story from the people who experienced it.
And that right there is a documentary.
Yeah, and that's what we went for. And Clyde himself, his lived experience, of course, anchors all that. Um, and as a documentary, in the average film that you might watch on a streaming service, there would be 8 to 12 interviews that carry the documentary through the 95 minutes. But we said right away we weren't going to do that. We have close to 40 people in the documentary because we wanted to hear from everybody around the world tell Clyde Best story, because Clyde was the only one that went all around the world.
Right.
So we took voices from around the world to tell Clyde's story. And what you get is his impact on the world. This story is about his impact. People know the story. He went, he did this thing, he scored these goals, but the impact. And I just want to illustrate what that looks like in the world.
Please do.
When we stepped out of a taxi in Rotterdam, and when he was being celebrated by Feyenoord, Clyde Best had not been back to Rotterdam since 1976. He stepped out of the taxi in the middle of the city, downtown, and a guy looked up on him and said, "Clyde Best?" And he had not been back since 1976.
And a lot of people do. And is that in the documentary, Dan?
I looked at my cameraman and I said, "Did you shoot that?"
And did he?
No.
A lot of people don't realize that he made it to Feyenoord. It's
Yeah.
only a year.
Yeah.
But he made it. And not only did he make it, like you said, they still remember him. They celebrate him. Absolutely love him because he was big in the NASL, which is the North American Soccer League. Obviously, the West Ham story is the most popular one. But yeah, there was a year in Feyenoord, and to hear that, years later, they still remember him like it was yesterday.
They don't forget Clyde Best wherever he went. It's interesting, the transition to the States, because a lot of people have dismissed over the years that the North American Soccer League was just a fledgling league, that it was an all-star league, that you were a has-been if you went to the league. But none of that's true. It was built on the backs of black and brown players from the islands, South America, Africa, and of course the legends from Europe were sprinkled in. Now, Clyde Best, when he arrives, He's both, and he's black. So he signaled to the world that and people knew what he had achieved in the UK. So Pele, of course, was a big name,
Yes.
but not for the community. It was Clyde Best that signaled to the black community that this was a change for North America. And that's a big statement. And we make that point in the movie.
And did you visit the NASL cities that he played in? I mean, you said you went all around the world, so I'm just checking in. I know there was Tampa, Portland, Los Angeles. I'm sure I'm missing a few.
Toronto.
Yes, Toronto, both indoor and outdoor.
Yeah, indoors, outdoors.
So you touched all these different cities?
Yeah, we took Clyde. Clyde was celebrated in Portland and in Tampa. Those are the two main teams where he played the most. In Portland, they painted a mural above right before we arrived on the stadium wall.
Still there?
To honor Clyde Best. Oh yeah, it's still there.
You're gonna have to go to Portland.
You could see the impact. You could see the fans. Of course, it was in Portland where he's reunited with his brother Clive Charles. They grew up and they lived together in that Charles family house for so long.
Right.
And the two of them are legends. And of course, Clive Charles went on to be the men and women's Olympic coaches in the U.S. He's the men and women's NCAA Division I coach at University of Portland, and went to the Final Four and won an NCAA championship, on and on and on. And when you think about, would he have been given those opportunities in the UK? The answer is a flat out no.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Clive Charles if he's watching. If you watch this, absolute legend of a coach. So you get that side of things, the North American side. He's still celebrated over there. Are you learning as you're going to all these different places, as a filmmaker and producer? I'm sure. Are you learning that how big this guy really is? I mean, he's not a small gentleman, but I mean his reach around the world. You say everywhere he's going is celebrated. What does that look like from your point of view as you go to all these different places and step out of a taxi in Rotterdam and Clyde Best and the excitement? Because I've gotten it as a Bermudian who's by no means a football star, but getting on the train, going to West Ham. I had the privilege of getting to the bowling ground before it was knocked down. And I've been to the Olympic Stadium now to see West Ham, to blow the bubbles in the east side of London. And people will hear you talk or see the shirt. We have shirts, Bermuda tees with home and the island on it. From Bermuda. Yes, sir. Clyde Best. And they light up and it's like, yes, I do know who he is. Oh my God. How do you take that on as a filmmaker when you're all around the world seeing this excitement?
Well, there's I've walked the streets of Hamilton and Bermuda with Clyde, and Mr. Best, Mr. Best, Mr. Best. We can barely get down the block.
Yeah, I hope you weren't going anywhere fast.
Exactly. But try to walk from the hotel outside of Olympic Stadium during a match to the stadium with Clyde Best. You can't get 50 feet. It's amazing. But what I learned about Clyde is, and I think those of us who really know Clyde, he tells you a little bit at a time. So everywhere we went, I learned more. And I'm like, Clyde, I can't believe you're just saying that. We were in an interview with West Ham Fan TV, and Clyde says to Dan, he says, well, I was not the first black player to be sponsored by Puma. I was the first pro player to be sponsored by Puma.
Wow.
And I'm like, Clyde, how long have you waited to tell me that piece? The first professional soccer player to be footballer to be sponsored by Puma in England.
I got to ask, Dan, did you get Puma on the phone and get a quick?
Absolutely. Got Puma on the phone. Puma supplied all the equipment for the reenactments. We should talk about the reenactments.
We were getting to that, Dan.
Yeah.
Tell me, you said earlier you got some live footage from the actual cameras that shot the games, and unfortunately, the atmosphere wasn't always the best with monkey chants, etc. But you had to reenact it. Who played a young Clyde Best,
I
and
don't know.
what do those shots look like? Did you spend hours trying to get them just right? Like, talk to me about that.
Well, the youth team that Clyde played for as a boy in Dockyard was Ireland Rangers.
Rangers.
And that club didn't exist when Clyde was a boy. And Clyde's father was the second in command at Casemates at the prison.
Right.
So Clyde grew up playing football at Moresby's, playing at the football field right there. And that's where the sailors, the Royal Navy sailors, played football. And they would invite Clyde and his brother Carlton and others, their buddies, to play. Now, these kids were 10, 11, 12 years old playing against men from the Navy.
That's how we get good, Dan.
That's how you got good. And so the famed Eddie Icewater Smith formed a team. And, Eddie, thank goodness, is still with us. He's 96. He plays himself in the movie. And Ice, gathered these kids up. They collected cans to raise money for uniforms. They sang Christmas carols to raise money for uniforms. They bought uniforms and eventually started scrimmaging the sailors and would go on to beat the sailors. And that is the formation of the 1967 Pan Am Bermuda team.
Really?
And those kids went on to win that bronze medal, the silver medal, in the 67 Pan Am Games. They lost in the finals to Mexico. So that momentum came out of those scrimmages. So what we did is we held tryouts. We had Somerset Cricket Club supplied the players. They all tried out to make the movie. We chose 11. Tyree Fubler got chosen to be Clyde Best. He was a great Clyde Best. And we scrimmaged two teams. We had an older group of players that were the sailors. And we went back and we recreated the uniforms with the crests and everything from the ships, created the old uniforms from the Ireland Rangers. And we played for 3 days in the heat a couple of years ago in August. And then we shot it with drones. We shot it from a boom lift. We shot it on the field. And we shot cutaways for hours. And that footage is sprinkled throughout, but also it's a segment in the movie.
That's incredible. So you've made this, and Puma supplied all the
kit and the balls and everything.
That's incredible. So you've made this about as realistic as it can possibly be on all fronts. Everything is 99% what it was like. The only thing missing is Clyde Best is a little more seasoned, so he couldn't play himself.
It's was an amazing piece of education for the youth of the island to understand the history there. Also to understand the history of the Somerset Cricket Club, Silver City, and all the history around that. And the success of Gary Darrell, the success of Sam Newsom, the success of Randy Horton. Randy Horton was the leading goal scorer for the Cosmos prior to Pele.
Yes, sir.
And, so Bermuda had a big impact on the North American Soccer League. And that 67 team is well celebrated in the movie for their accomplishments and everything they did, winning the silver medal.
Wow. So you're not only telling a Clyde Best story, you're telling a Bermudian football story at the same time. This documentary sounds like it's got a lot of parts, Dan. You've done pretty well.
A lot of parts. And we have the footage. We have the footage from 67. We found it in Mexico.
Wow.
And Clyde had never seen most of this footage before either. He hadn't seen a lot of his West Ham goals before.
You know what? That was a question I had for you. When you went through the footage you found, I bet Mr. Best stood there or sat there and he was probably silent because he probably hadn't seen a lot of it.
He really hadn't seen the footage. And, he's seeing it for the first time, as we all will when we watch the doc. And, we had to dig into the BBC archives, the ITV archives, the Pan American Game archives, the NASL archives, all that. None of it was logged. So we had to find pictures Clive Charles, action shots of Clive Charles, Addie Coker, Clyde Best, Randy Horton, and others to tell the story. So we actually did those logs, and those are now the official logs for the BBC and other outlets.
You really had to do your homework, didn't you? It wasn't just to sit down and talk to a gentleman from Bermuda.
It wasn't a one and done, that's for sure.
How long did this take to film? And I will go back real quick. Well, let's start there. How long did it take to make this film? From conception to, I'm sure you got the final cut now that's ready to go, and we'll talk about when people can see it. But how long did it take to put this all together?
Well, from the time we, got the initial grant to roll in cameras, that was in 2022.
Okay.
The build up to 22, the writing of it, the proposals, the hunting for money, all that sort of stuff started probably a year and a half prior, when I just finished another major documentary. So I finished this one film, and another producer asked me, did I have any ideas for a new one? And I said, well, I've got this Clyde Best thing kind of kicking around the back of my head. And, we got here knowing that the World Cup was coming in North America in 2026.
Yes, sir.
That was always our goal, to release the film during the World Cup. And we've achieved that goal.
And with what the documentary talks about and the basis of it and all it includes, what a time to release it, because it's still very prominent in the world today, unfortunately. So I think it'll resonate with not only those that remember Clyde Best back in the day and those who know about him already, but I believe it'll have some new fans. You're going to get a whole new generation that can relate to it because they're going through the same things, unfortunately, today. We've seen it most recently in European games. It's still haunting us. It's still something that needs to be dealt with. But yeah, releasing it now in the modern day, it's still going to resonate with a whole new generation.
Clyde Best is a uniter. He unites this island, and he's a uniter when it comes to race relations in sport and football and soccer. And now he's doing it again. When you look at the host of sponsors we have coming together, the community of charitable funds, supporters, and he's putting Bermuda back as he did in the 60s in the global eye. Front page of the Sunday Times, ESPN, CBS Sports are all covering this story because Clyde Best is the Jackie Robinson of England. And when you put it in that perspective, that Jackie Robinson was 27 years old, a man, when he first broke the color barrier in baseball. But here we have a 17-year-old boy by himself on a one-way plane ticket. The fortitude and the mindset to do that without the support of a team, without the support of a league, by himself, without his parents, to do that. This is one of the greatest sports stories of all time. And to put that in a frame that Clyde Best, from this tiny island of 60,000 people, when he first stepped into a stadium, had more people in the stadium than in this entire island. And they were throwing things at him. And he scored goals. And he carried himself loud and proud. And he carried that flag throughout and changed the entire game. And of course, when the 18-year-old Clyde Best plays Pele for the first time, and they face off, and Pele scores 2 goals, and Clyde Best scores 2 goals, and the headlines don't even talk about the teams. The headline said Best 2, Pele 2. And after the game, Pele says to Clyde Best, I'm the king, you're the prince. And here we go. That puts it into perspective, what Clyde Best represents.
Dan, what you just said might be some of the most powerful words ever spoken about this whole story. Clyde Best is the Jackie Robinson for football. We've all seen the Jackie Robinson story, 42. We know what that means. Clyde Best is the Jackie Robinson of football. That's amazing. I love that. And it makes sense, which is crazy because again, people know the story. I know the story, but we've never been told in detail. And this documentary is going to do that, and I think that's amazing. And I just have to ask you, why do you think it took so long to get this documentary and this story told, not just by yourself, but by anybody?
It's a great question. His story's been around for over 40 years. And I've looked at that question multiple times. Here in Bermuda, the Bermuda version of the story is Clyde did a great thing. But a lot of people do great things.
Fair.
In England, Clyde's story is he's a pioneer. No, he's Jackie Robinson. They don't frame it because it's an England version of the story. And the other black players don't say it because it hurts their brand.
Fair.
So when we said it, of course, I was nervous because I'm saying something about Clyde Best that is true, but hasn't been spoken. And now when you see the reception of the movie in London with tickets selling out, and you see the press and the Sunday Times, they're agreeing with the story. There's no pushback because it's fact. And we built the story in such a way you can't push back. We honor the Black history in football in the UK, and we celebrate what Clyde did.
That's amazing, Dan. We've spoken about it. You seem to have really done your homework. Hey, it's a blessing for you that it did take this long because it was open and available for you to be able to get behind the lens and write and tell this story for the world to hear. So you've mentioned it's going to be shown in England, shown in Bermuda. Do you know the dates and the times? Where can people see this? I've heard of ClydeBest.com.
Yeah.
Let talk to me about how people can see this film. Has it been shown yet? Has anybody seen it?
We have a few screener copies for the press.
Okay.
We did a private showing for Clyde, so Clyde could see it.
I just have to ask his emotional state, his reception of that was.
There's not going to be a dry eye in this house when you watch this film. It's emotional.
I'm tearing up.
It's emotional, and I think Clyde was a little overwhelmed by what he saw, and when he saw the full impact of how his impact. I think even Clyde may have not realized his full impact. So when you go to ClydeBest.com, of course, you can learn about the film.
Yes, sir.
And you can learn about where we're showing it. We open up in London, and I invite Bermudians to London. Come see the movie in London. Celebrate your country and Clyde Best in London, March 25th through the 29th. We're going to be in Sadler's Wells, right there at the Olympic Stadium in Queen Elizabeth Park in Stratford. Beautiful, brand new theater. And it's going to be jammed. It's going to be full. And we invite all Bermudians to join us coming up here in a few weeks. And then we come here to Bermuda the 21st through the 26th, 27th. We'll be at Earl Cameron for 2 nights.
Of April.
Yeah. Thank you. Of April for 2 nights. And then we're going to Cedar Bridge for the rest of the run because it's a bigger auditorium.
Yes, sir.
And, we're bringing Harry Redknapp and a lot of other legends to the island to celebrate Clyde. So there's a lineup every night of VIPs. Every night's a premiere. It's not just the first night. There's a red carpet experience every night, live streaming going on every night, and a celebration of Clyde. And it's an opportunity, Footy, for all of these Bermudian players and clubs to come see the story. I'm expecting that every football club on this island will turn out for this. And coaches will be dragging kids to see and learn about the history of Bermudian football. And to complement all that, we've done an exhibit on the history and the impact of Bermuda around the world on football. We look at the 67 Pan Am Games. We look at Cano Smith. We look at, of course, the GOAT, Sean Goater, Nicky Wells, the Bascom boys, Randy Horton, and others are all in the all featured here. And you see that Bermuda has been exporting the game around the world for a very long time. Kyle Lightbourne and others are in the exhibit. So Sam the Cat Newsom, I remember, I'll never forget watching him play. So, this is a global impact and an important thing. And we look forward to seeing people.
Love this, Dan. You're telling me more than I know. I'm sure the audience who view this, we put it on YouTube and on our podcast app, so people can listen, but they can also see us talking.
Yeah.
So I hope you knew that. You're okay with that. But you're not only telling a Bermudian story that needed to be told, but you are appreciating Bermudian football and also boosting that. Is that something that meant a lot to the filmmakers to not only, sort of maybe profit off one of our resources, but to give back and tell the story and give their flowers while they're here to the Kyle Lightbournes, the Connor Smiths, and the Key Wells, Randy Ortons, who really have put Bermuda on the map all over the world. Is that something that you took pride in and you made sure that you did?
None of us succeed in a vacuum. It takes a community. And the Bermudian community has a lot of success. And Clyde Best, benefited from being part of that community. And so Clyde recognizes that community. I recognize that community because that community changed my life when we won the state championships with Jerry Best in Bridgeton, Maine in 1983.
Dan passed the ball to Jerry.
Jerry score.
So yeah, I can appreciate and thank you for giving back to the Bermudian community with a show. You said that's a set up. Where's that going to be?
That's going to be at the Bermuda Society of Arts in City Hall.
Okay.
And it'll be travel with the show. And then it's going to be a permanent installation in Dockyard at the Diamond International building.
Oh, okay. Got you. So on Island, London, East London, you said in Stratford, you got them all there, folks. You Bermudians like to shop. But get your tickets, ClydeBest.com. Show up. If you're in England, even better. You don't have to pay for the ticket. Get online, get to the ClydeBest.com website, get what you can left. Bermudians, we're coming home. Dan said he's bringing all sorts of names that you'll know. Harry Redknapp, you've mentioned, who Clyde actually attributes, along with, I believe, Sir Bobby Charlton and one other, for helping him get through.
They're all
races.
Jeff Hurst and all those really helped him and supported Clyde.
Yeah, so these, and we've all seen them on TV, but these guys have more stories to tell than transfers and who's going up, who's going down. Dan, I have a few more questions for you, if you don't mind. Who needs to see this film?
Everybody needs to see this film. This is a story that will educate, motivate, and inspire you in your own life to achieve great things. If you're down, this is a movie about getting back up. If you're confused and you don't know your direction, this is a story about fate. If you need a mentor, this is a story about mentorship, coaching. Eddie Icewater Smith helping out, mentorship, coaches, how we affect kids' lives. This is a story about family. Clyde doing what his parents told him to do. This is a story about being responsible and carrying the flag for your community, your home, and your country. And everybody should see this movie.
And who did you make this film for, Dan?
It's one of my great privileges in my life to honor Clyde Best and to treat that with honor. And I made it for the sporting world to understand what a 17-year-old boy can do and what he did.
And that is transform the beautiful game. I'll say that again. Transform the beautiful game, the Clyde Best Story. That's the name of the documentary, Dan?
Transforming the Beautiful Game, the Clyde Best Story, the most impactful sportsman you never knew.
Love that. Dan, I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like to thank you for doing your homework, for including Bermuda and not just trying to profit off of us. I'd like to thank you for immersing yourself in the community, getting around, seeing the murals painted up in Somerset, learning the history of what happened in Dockyard and the shipmen playing the boys, the Pan Am Games in '67, learning all the players throughout the years and paying tribute to them, not only in the film but also in the arts society where we'll have the little art show and history in on show, sorry, and then up in Dockyard full time.
You know, the people from the ships are going to go to the Dockyard football exhibit and learn about Bermuda sports. You know, you're the only country in the world with a holiday around a sporting event. Sports matter here in this island, and they make a difference in kids' lives.
Absolutely. And Dan, I don't think I'm wrong for saying this. I think after this documentary is out and people have seen the film, you will have made a difference in a lot of people's lives. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So that's it, folks. That's Dan Egan. He is the producer of the film, Changing the Beautiful Game, the Clyde Best Story, the sportsman you never knew.
The most impactful sportsman.
The most impactful sportsman you never knew. Get your tickets, ClydeBest.com. They're in England, in the East End of London. They're coming home after that in April. They're in the East End of London in March, and then they're coming back home in April. We hope to see everybody there. If you're part of a club, any type of club, it doesn't have to be football. If you're part of Bermuda, if you are Bermudian and you are proud to be Bermudian, we hope to see you there. This film was made for all of us. It's really about all of us, but it's specifically designed for Bermudians. Worldwide, this story will have an impact. Dan said, Clyde Best is the Jackie Robinson of football. Think about that, then go buy your tickets. That's how much it means. We hope to see you there. I'll be there, and you'll be there too. Stay Irie.